say goodbye.
We wanted a change in our lives after 40, like many people. We spent a lot of time managing our children and our association, and in the end, the energy we put into work was costing us more and more because we felt a general lack of meaning, like we wanted to be in control of our whole life, not just part of it. So we bought a place that already had guest rooms, and after finishing the renovation of the buildings, we wanted to develop the grounds and especially make our dream of having a cabin on the water come true.
At first we weren't really sure how we were going to do it, whether we wanted something more turnkey or something that would require more work from us. It wasn't very clear. We contacted several companies and actually we were drawn to Cabana Log because it's right nearby. The guy is really nice and the way he suggested working suited us very well. On the side, I want to make the cabins affordable, so I make the wooden parts for you, and then after that it's you who will assemble everything, and suddenly in terms of the budget it worked out much better.
Well, let's not kid ourselves. The budget is an important part of the decision. But what we liked about Cabanologue is that he used wood from Corrèze and Dordogne, so just an hour's drive from the property. The cabin was 25,000 euros. We added 10,000 euros for the stilts, and we reached 60,000 euros once it was fully fitted out. So here we are in the cabin. So we chose to equip it, especially with a nice fridge. Energy efficient, to give you an idea, 66 kilowatts per year. That's about 15 or 16 euros in electricity. So it really doesn't use much, and we realized that it's what allows you to live comfortably in a cabin deep in the woods without needing to go shopping every day. Alongside this new fridge, well, in the end, it's a reclaimed wood stove that we installed. We took advantage of having to make a change in one of the buildings up there, in one of the 17th century thatched cottages, to restore it and set it up here. And well, it's oversized for the place, but it allows us to use very little wood. With one log in the morning and one log in the evening, we're warm all day. So for the rest, we went for new things. We wanted quality materials that last over time, so we wouldn't have to redo the installation twice. So it's a wooden kitchen, a wooden table, the walls were done with lime, and the ceiling is made of paneling. So the little cashier booths are the same, with wooden doors. We had custom-made beds. The captain's room with its mahogany woodwork to capture the spirit of a ship. So here there's a small bathroom, a tiny bathroom with a pump sink area, just like the kitchen, which lets you freshen up a bit, a private space to change clothes. And in addition to this space, there's a sanitary area a bit higher up and dry toilets near the cabin. When we visited the property for the first time, there were quite a few buildings up there. But in the end, it was the land that charmed us. Because we walked around the pond, we stopped in that corner over there and sat down. And then we imagined spending the rest of our lives here, and the cabin just became obvious, like a childhood dream. But to ask ourselves, would we be able to build a cabin in the middle of this pond, and would the world keep turning without us? Yes, so let's live happily, let's stay hidden. But in the end, let's share a little bit of this dream with others by welcoming them one by one to share a bit of this little paradise. So we went to see the mayor to say that we were interested in buying this property to create tourist accommodations. But we wanted to have permission to build a cabin on the water. So the mayor was happy, welcomed us warmly, and promised us that it would be possible. It turns out that at the time, we didn't have all the information to know that not everything was in his hands, that the town's zoning plan hadn't been written yet. And so it was the beginning of a long adventure, but the mayor kept his word and supported us in our endeavor. For us, it's a tourist activity, and that's what helps us get permits, because our property has a zoning designation for tourist use. So it's not the same as people who want to live in this type of housing every day, so the issue is different as well. It's happened several times that couples come and tell us that in reality they're kind of scouting to experience for themselves what it's like to live in a cabin. Some people have even come outside of the peak season, like for a week in March, to test the wood stove, using dry toilets at night, and to see if it was really imaginable, doable. For them, it was a short-term project. They wanted to get started within the year. So all that was left was to find the department, the property. And after a week, we felt they were ready to really dive into the project. It's the cabin that comes closest to a real home, and now wooden houses are much more common. It meets the RT 2012 standard, so it can be recognized as a house, as a permanent home, much more easily than at a time when living in wooden houses seemed a bit heretical, but now it's common. It's a real saving compared to buying a house. Once we built our cabin, we realized that the terrace space was also very important, because people realize that they want to be outside more, but still with some comfort, at least the minimum. So we chose to keep the cabin's aesthetic by building another arch and installing this micro-perforated tarp, which allows us to spend time outside but sheltered. They say on the Camino de Santiago you don't need to know how to walk. Your body will relearn that it knows how to walk along the way. Well, life in a cabin, I think it's a bit like that too. That is, our body will relearn that we are not made to live inside looking at screens. That's not what it's made for. Inside is for, cooking, sleeping, reading.
But most of the day should be spent outside to find balance, and I think the cabin spirit is a bit like that. It's about finding the right balance between outside and inside.
To design the cabanologue needs less than a month, even though there's also the drying time for the arches when we glue them together. Afterwards, it actually took us a month to make it weatherproof, just the two of us, even though our children helped us set up the frame at the beginning over 3 days. And then afterwards, well, we had the remaining months to calmly set up the interior.
We have 4 children, and we were used to always telling them, well, during the holidays everyone gives a little help. The rule at home is 1 hour of chores per day. And then our son that year, it was the year he was taking his baccalaureate, he told us, I have another idea. I'll come with some friends, they'll stay for 3 days, and after that you leave me alone for the rest of the holidays. That will make up for all my daily hours. Well, so why not? We went for it. It's true that for this kind of project it's better to do it all at once rather than 1 hour a day. And actually having a bit more manpower to hold each of the arches wasn't a bad idea. Well, the small detail is that, we ended up with, I don't remember, 4 or 5 high school graduates who had never held a hammer before. So it was pretty funny. Well, they asked me for help a lot, like, what do we do now and what do we do next? Their parents were amused and said they didn't know their kids could do all that. And actually, well, it was totally possible. It's well made and well thought out enough. Someone in the group needed to know what they were doing, but it was still doable with a bunch of 18-year-olds who had never done any DIY before. When you work together like that and everything has been well thought out beforehand, it goes really fast. I mean, in 3 days, the whole frame of the cabin was done, and it's really satisfying. At one point, it's just a little anecdote, but we realized when we were building the dock that actually, well, the structure of the dock didn't line up with the pilings. So we said to ourselves, okay, we've got a problem here. Actually, the cabin on its pilings was shifted by more than 10 centimeters. And so there we were with the whole framework completely assembled, and we had to shift it by 10 centimeters on the pilings. Well, the young guys got underneath it. We bent down, lifted the cabin, and moved it together by 10 centimeters. Well, they still talk about it, you know, it's something that seems completely extraordinary to them. But well, it was possible, everyone was motivated, it was really rewarding, things are moving forward, it's really nice. Since the first steps go really fast, you think in 3 days we have the framework, then you add 3 or 4 more days, 3 or 4 more days. If we stick to it daily, we'll end up with a building that's already watertight and airtight. And the rest, well, we can go at our own pace. It's very satisfying. Here, on top of that, we gave ourselves extra challenges by building over the water, which required this pontoon, this terrace. You can do exactly the same thing in a meadow, 6 concrete pads. We don't have the issue of working at height. So we can also go much faster. There, for example, at certain stages, we actually needed 3, 4, or 5 people because we were building above the water. On the plane, in my opinion, at certain stages with the arches, if you have 3 people, 1 holding each end and 1 bolting, you can get the job done with 3.
Not only did it get done, but it got done pretty quickly. I was surprised once we got started. There you go. I think you probably have to be a little bit crazy, but it's that little touch of craziness that makes you take the leap. If we knew everything, we wouldn't do anything. And at the same time, once you get started, well, you realize that it's doable, that you have the abilities. Since we wanted to do it on a pond, first the pond had to meet the standards. So that was a big project. There was 40,000 euros worth of work just to bring it up to standard with all sorts of issues. Since we have a river down below, we couldn't let the warm water flow down and change the ecosystem there. It had to be the cold water, so we needed a water control outlet. So we needed bulldozers. Everything had to be cleared out. There were a lot of materials. That's when we got help from the CPIE. And there was still some help, a grant to update the pond. And once it was bare, it was time to look into the whole issue of stilts. We hadn't imagined concrete stilts. We were thinking more of steel feet that could be screwed in, you know, which would allow for a lot of weight. And the problem was that the company that used to do this more easily before, now they were asking for a soil study. And the soil study was very expensive, and we didn't know what we were going to find. On the stilts, we installed a metal piece screwed into the concrete to allow the wooden beams to be installed and not be in contact with the water at all. On this structure, OSB boxes with exterior rain barriers were put in place, ready to be filled with wood fiber insulation inside, and we positioned them next to each other. These are boxes that are about as tall as a person, so they're still pretty big pieces. But they're actually sturdy enough to be placed next to each other without falling over. They fit together. So yeah, it's kind of like Lego, and we finished with a wooden floor, there you go, which we covered up while we finished the roof. I think the design is really well done to allow people who don't necessarily have a lot of experience to get started. For the water, there's a double system. Either inside for washing your hands, we put in a manual pump system, like RVs with water jugs. And for the dishes and showers, there's a sanitary area a bit higher up that allows us to share these bigger facilities with other accommodations. However, the cabins were built around dry toilets. And it's a model that was very expensive, the Sanisphere model that we came across on the Camino de Santiago. And actually these are waterless models with no additives. So there's a vermicomposting system. Urine and liquid waste go into the ground through a dedicated network. And the fecal matter is carried away by a small manual conveyor belt. You press the pedal 5 times and the fecal matter is carried to the space behind, where little worms take care of breaking down the fecal matter. So afterwards we can use this material for the garden.
For the solar installation, well, the design itself, a company helped me to determine the capacity and get the equipment. We have 3 panels that actually power a second building, kind of in this same style of lighter housing. And then we have 2 batteries. And so, well, with that, that's basically enough for everything. So we have lighting, of course. We have a very energy efficient fridge. We have a range hood. We have outlets. You can charge your phone. You can charge a computer. There's no problem. Plug in your bedside lamps, etc. The only things we can do with this type of installation, it's all the appliances with heating elements like toasters, kettles, hair dryers, electric heaters. It creates too much demand at once, so in that case we can't, but for everything else, no problem. We used to say, and it might sound very pretentious, but what we want is to be a kind of demonstration project to show that actually an environmentally friendly home, an ecological home, doesn't mean going back to the candle era or being cold in your house. Ecology isn't the enemy of comfort. We're very comfortable, you see, we're warm, like I explained with the stove, we're warm. It's not going backwards, that's it.
It's really a living space that lets you rediscover the cozy feeling of home. And it's pretty magical to step out of the house, find yourself on this terrace and be instantly immersed in nature, with the green of the trees, the water, like a mirror, where you can see birds flying in the sky and reflected on the water's surface. It reminds us that we ourselves are a part of nature. I bought her a gold ring and I paid the rent.